So, how do we want to do this?
That's a good question. Yeah, like what do we want to talk about?
Ah, okay. You are being like held by coffee.
That's
Well,
Candace's
coffee
natural
is
state.
good. Coffee is good.
Yeah, I'm being Kinder
You
today and I'm drinking coffee. You see,
I'm
you can
sad.
see.
I'm drinking water.
Oh yeah,
I'm starting to
guys.
envy that now. I have no clean drinking water.
Um,
I mean, I guess we could start. We probably should start with introductions.
okay.
Seeing as this is going to be posted, well, hopefully, if everything goes
Right.
well, people should know who we are.
You mean
Really?
people aren't just
Really?
naturally
You're
gonna
gonna
know?
eat? You're gonna make me hungry while we do this?
It's my breakfast. Look,
Ah,
tuna.
What's that? Tuna?
Yeah,
and cheese.
and cheese. Yeah.
I agree with the tuna, not the cheese.
I'm the other way around.
Never tried the mix before.
It's cottage.
Well,
We have
yeah,
cottage.
it's more that it's cottage cheese that I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
Cottage.
had cottage
How do you
cheese.
say it? Cottage.
Alrighty. Well, I can start since I'm the one who said we should do this. My name is Kindar. I am the Tiger Writes. I write under the name of Sylvain Saint Pierre. I have 12 books currently on Amazon. I kind of figure we're going to be putting links in the notes section of YouTube. So whoever handles that, I can give you guys links to my webpage and such. I have been writing basically my entire life. But I've been writing I've been writing what I call seriously for the last 5 or maybe 6 years. That's sort of when I decided that publishing might be something that was worth giving a try. And yep. Who's next?
You should say that you love tigers. That would
I
explain.
would like to think I don't. It's something I do not have to say. That it is quite obvious at this point. Like my shirt,
For sure.
my tigers,
Okay.
and my name. I'm the Tiger Writes. So
Okay, I'll go. Can I go?
go for it.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Hello, guys. My name is Isadora. You can call me Isa, Easy, Dora, anything you want.
I always think your name is Izzy too, by the way.
I'm from Brazil, and I hate being from Brazil. I'm going to immigrate soon, and soon enough, nobody will ever know I'm from Brazil. So you are privileged to know that. I've been writing since I was like 8. My first story is about pirates, and nowadays I still write about pirates, but eventually. I don't like when the books kill everybody, so my books are mostly peaceful and good for all ages. Let me see. I started publishing online last year, but now I'm going to start publishing seriously on the genre. Can somebody say this word for me? Genre. Genre. Genre.
Genre?
Exactly.
Oh, genre.
Genre. Yeah. Lit RPG, there is game lit, there is books about that has some kind of game dynamic in it, and that's it. Finish.
Very nice. Hey, by the way, Karina, it shows on your screen that the mic is still off, but I can hear you when you talk. But oh,
Yeah, my birds are really loud right now. So when I'm talking, I turn it on, and when I'm not talking, I turn it off. Just I can't shut off my birds.
oh, gotcha. Okay.
Who
Who's
will be
that?
next?
Well, I guess I can go next. So, yeah, my name's Alan Huntsman. I too have been writing about most of my life. I remember my mom always tells me that she remembers me being, a little 5-year-old kid, sitting at the dining room table trying to scribble in a notebook, but not knowing how to spell any words or construct any sentences. And so I was sitting there, just basically making images of shark teeth, line after line, but thinking I was telling a story, but not knowing how to do it. And so yeah, I guess there's always been kind of an ingrained, inherited passion to do it. I write a lot of horror fiction. Mainly it's horror. I always say that I want to explore other genres like fantasy and the thriller genre and stuff, but I've even tried a little comedy, but it always turns into a horror mess every time I try to explore anything else. And so I guess that's just really what it is that I want to write. And I got a couple of YouTube channels. I've published in some magazines. I could show you right here, actually. Like I published in Dark Gothic Resurrection.
Wow, fancy.
A few stories there, but it's been a little harder publishing in some markets, and the horror genre I notice is kind of struggling with their identity right now with a lot of the problems going on. And so I've started just the turbulence, in society and stuff. And so I've started a channel to try to tell my stories there. But yeah, that's kind of the basic story of me. All right, CK.
Guess that leaves me.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. My name is Karina, and no English-speaking person can pronounce my last name, so I just go by a bunch of weird letters plopped together that make sense to me, but not to a lot of other people. But CK is fine, which is a name these guys gave me, and I've come to really love that. No one ever called me that before. I write pretty much any genre I can find characters for. I focus on the characters, and the plot comes secondary to me in a way. Generally, the characters just decide what they want to do, and I follow along, kind of reluctantly. But that's my way of writing, and that's who I am as a writer. And I'm from Denmark, so I might sound a little bit weird. I'm not sure anymore. I can't figure out my own accent.
Your accent sounds a lot milder than I imagined, to be honest. Like sometimes
Thank you.
when I'd read your messages and stuff, I imagined it as stronger. But
Well, I could go completely Danish and just go, yo.
Seeing as I forgot, sorry.
CK, say your last name.
Kær Lassen. And
Oh,
Kær is a misspelled version of the Danish word kær, which means deer. And Lassen, I think, is German for eating. So my name is Karina Deer Eating.
No way. Go, please.
Yeah,
Seeing as I forgot to say it, I write also in multiple genres. The common thread that I tend to follow throughout the genre is that my stories are about men in some kind of relationship with other men. I don't do romance. So I'm not going there. Might someday, but I doubt it. But relationship, combative, trying to be understanding. It seems to be what interests me, that I wrap around another kind of story. Like, right now I'm working on a fraudulent death, which is a sort of procedural mystery, but at its core, it's the story of Marlowe and Trembor as they try to rebuild their relationship after the trauma of book 2 and book 3.
Oh,
And I don't do that in absolutely every story. Like Bottom Rung has no relationship aspect to it. It's pure adventure, basically set in a dungeon core world. And yeah, but that I tend to go back to men in relationships with men.
And you have a podcast you were saying too, the
Oh,
Raw Story.
well, yeah. I have the Raw Storyteller podcast. Raw because I don't do editing. So it's me talking for 5 to 10 minutes about, if I can think of a subject. If I can't, there's no podcast happening, which is why there has not been a podcast for the last 6 months. I can't think of.
So you don't script it at all, huh? You
No.
just sit down.
I don't do scripts. I'm very off the cuff. Even my writing is very off the cuff. Left to my own device, an outline might look like a couple of bullet points with the high points that I want the story to hit. And there's no telling if I will hit those points by the time the story is done. I'm a pantser. I can work with an outline. I've discovered that, and I do like it. Like it does make the writing in and of itself easier because I know where I'm going. It's the building of the outline that I don't have the brain mechanics to achieve. And I'm like that with everything. Like, I don't script anything. When I do my podcast, I'll write down the point I want to address, and then let just go.
Interesting. Fits the title of it perfect then. Raw
Well, yeah, that's why I was happy it was not that it was a title that was not taken when I grabbed it, because I didn't know what else I could go with.
How about everyone else talk about like your writing process, whether you're a pantser, an outliner, all that? I'd love to hear that. You can start, Isadora, and then
Yeah.
go.
Okay. Before I used to be super plotter. I would plot everything, and nowadays it depends on the story. My regular game lit that I'm writing, the one that looks like the conventions for this kind of book, that is a guy that goes to another world and then starts to level up. This is completely non-plotter, I have not a plot, I have no idea where it's going. It's fun, but sometimes I prefer to have a plot because I know that the editing will be much easier, because I know that the story will make sense by the time I end it. Because I've done the plot before, so I know where to put each stuff. I'm a Virgo, if you guys believe in signs, star signs, so you have to be organized to be a Virgo.
You see, I find that interesting that you are doing lit RPG without an outline, because in my own attempt at lit RPG, I've discovered that the necessity of a game system forced me to build an outline. I couldn't simply enhance it, because then the system would get in the way. So I needed to know where the character would go. Like, it's not, again, like, it's bullet points. Like, it's not a big, but I found that I still needed that. Bottom Rung, which is my Dungeon Core, which is a story in a world of Dungeon Core, is game lit because there's no system that I play with. Like, it's progression. You'd mentioned you'd mentioned cultivation when I was talking about it, and I asked around, and I'm not doing it right for it to be cultivation. So they said the better term for the way I'm doing it is progression. And that's because I haven't read cultivation novels yet. This book was not supposed to be written right now. Like, it was an idea I had, and I went, I'm putting this on the back burner, and the idea went, no, you're not. And
I will be written
sorry?
now.
Yeah, well,
I will be written now.
Yeah, like I'd written down a few points, and because I figured I've gotten it out of my head, it's going to leave me alone. And then I got home on vacation with nothing to do, and I wrote my usual the chapter for my book that I'm publishing, and I had nothing left to do for the rest of the day. And I just glanced at it, and I went, hey, you know what? Let's write the first scene that opens the book. And I'm now 16 chapters in, probably close to 80,000 words.
You were amazing.
And if I'm lucky, this is going to be finished before I get back to work on Thursday.
No way.
This will be the fastest novel I've ever written, and I was not even trying.
You have the power.
Well, yeah, I mean, a big part of it is I've had nothing to do for almost for 3 weeks now, so. Sorry, I didn't mean to take over.
One thing that you said, that's the cultivation thing, is because progression is bigger, cultivation is inside progression, There is like game lit, and then inside game lit there is progression, and then inside progression there's cultivation.
Yeah, and to be cultivation, it has to be done in a fairly specific way. And as I've not read cultivation novels, I don't know how to go about doing it that way. And I don't care.
Yeah. Sure.
I love this novel. I love the story. I love Tibbs as a character. I just wanted to tell the story, which is, and it will be what it will be in the end. If it's progression, it's progression. If it's cultivation, it's cultivation.
Let the story be the boss, huh?
Yeah, well, yeah, and to me, it's actually a bit of an issue in that when I finish writing a novel and I go to publish it, they go, "What is this thing? Like, what genre is this in?" And I'm going, okay, genre I can usually match, but then they want tag words.
Yeah.
And I'm going, what am I supposed to call this thing? Okay, like the story of Trambor and Marlowe. Okay, it's a relationship story, but they want to call that a romance, which it's not. It's a mystery. It's like. How do I define these? Because I can't start by defining what the story is going to be. I write the story, and then I hit my head on the desk trying to figure out what it is. So, but yeah,
I have the same problem with my cultivation story, because it's not exactly cultivation either. It's, I guess it's progression, but not really, It's gonna be what's gonna be.
Yeah. And it becomes an inconvenient. Well, that's not the right word. It becomes something that needs to be resolved when you hit the publish button.
Yeah.
Because if you don't publish it right, you're not going to hit your market properly. and that's not a concern for everyone who writes. Like, you publish a few hour story. Karina, have you published anything at this point?
I have 2 out. I have
Two out?
Concerning Death, which
Okay,
is
so we're
a
all
thriller.
published. Isadora, do you have something published?
Three
So-
books, romance, steamy romance.
So we're all published. So it's all something we've gone through, figuring out where that story is supposed to go. Because I figure that even within horror, you can't these days just go, well, this is horror, I'm done. The market, I believe, requires a bit more definition of what.
One thing, yeah, that's a good point, Kendar. One difficulty I've run into with the horror genre is just with a lot of the civil unrest and things rising up. When I'm exploring like magazine markets, they'll list, like, here's an example. I came across a magazine. They listed like, we want vampires and werewolves and all these frightening, violent monsters. Excuse me. But we don't want any violence in the story at all. And for me, that just kind of ruined, it canceled out the whole point of a lot of those monsters.
Well, I mean,
the reason.
Well, that leaves psychological horror, at which point you don't want a vampire or a werewolf for that.
No.
Psychological horror, you want the kid next door. Yeah, it's a bit like, Karina, you're the one who was pointing out the story origin thing a few days ago, I think, or was it Book Pub?
Oh yeah,
where they want a romantic mystery without romance or crime.
yeah.
So
It also wasn't allowed to be
what do
steamy
they want?
or sexually suggestive covers, and there was a very suggestive cover in there.
Yeah. I looked at those covers and I'm going, barely none of these respect the rules, because they're either clearly a mystery, a crime mystery, or clearly steamy romance. Like, I'm going, none of these books should be allowed in that promotion. But yeah,
I would say that is the promoter's fault, because that was.
Oh yeah, because people submit them to the promoter, and I think what basically happened is that he realized that if he was going by his own rule or their own rules, they'd have no book to promote.
Yeah.
So instead of changing the rules, they've just put all the books they wanted on there. It's their promotion. It's they can handle it however they want.
Another thing I've noticed in the horror genre too, particularly with novels, is a lot of the art cover. It's almost like they're trying to hide them within the literary genre. They don't, like, when you look at the old 80s horror novels and well, it kind of started changing in the 90s, but especially those old 80s ones, it really stood out as this is going to be an insane adventure. Insane, yes, but fun, and now it's almost like they're trying to conceal that, hide it, like they're ashamed of it, or maybe they're trying to take it more seriously. I don't know for sure, but I've noticed big changes in the art cover when it comes to the horror genre that way.
Everything we're talking about, it's all inside the writing to market. We have problems fitting our novels exactly because we're not writing specifically to market, but then we want to market it.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's why most of the successful independent indie authors write to market. Like they have this knack of figuring out what the market wants and being able to write what they want as well as what the market wants. Like,
that's the thing. Yeah,
I don't know if I can do that. Like,
I couldn't do it, man.
Me neither.
I tried, but
You burned out.
Vomit out kind of in my mind and heart,
successful.
and then find a home for it somewhere.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean we can't be successful that way. It just means that the amount of work we will have to put into it will be higher than the people who are able to write to market. It's, like I have 12 books. By every metric out there, I should be close to be able to live off my books. I can barely make $30 a month off my books. That's because none of them are written to market. If I take my one finished series, Tristan, the main character, you have to read one book where he's utterly unlikable to get to the next ones where his story progresses. But how the hell do I convince someone to get through this book? I can tell them, well, the writing is really good, because it is. The story, the world building is decent. The characters are interesting. But I can't tell them what this is. I market it as science fiction thriller, because honestly, that's the only thing I can think of. But clearly it's not it, because people aren't buying it.
Maybe it's more fantasy then, or
well, it's definitely science fiction. Like, it's in space with ships and ray guns, and like it is
Space
science
opera.
fiction. But yeah, so I keep trudging along. I keep my writing books, and hopefully one day I'll have enough from that and my Patreon to earn a living.
Man, this reminds me, there's this Victorian novel called New Grub Street, and it's about the very subject you're talking about, Kindar. About, you have Reardon, his name's Reardon, and he's the serious novelist, trying to write a book that means a lot to him, but he can barely make any money from it. And then there's Jasper Milvain, who, like you said, he writes to the market. He studies the market out, and he's got a whole business plan for it, of how he's going to make money. And just this conversation. Check the book out.
Is this book old?
It's an old one, from 1888.
So you see, it's not Amazon's fault. People say when Amazon came along, now we have to write to market.
Writing to here's the dichotomy here, is that we are looking at 200-year-old writers as being these amazing people, when in their time they were writing to market. The big one is Shakespeare. Everybody goes, "Oh, Shakespeare is such this wonder, this genius." But back in his days, he was despised because his plays were written to the lowest common denominator. He never wrote art. Shakespeare never wrote art.
He wrote dick jokes and memes.
Yeah, he wrote what was popular. He wrote what people wanted to hear. And in time, because he became popular, that became art.
I would also
love Shakespeare.
Yeah, I'm a big Shakespeare fan, so I kind of want to defend him right here. Because
I'm not saying he was not a genius. I'm not saying he was not good. He was amazing. But part of his amazingness is that he knew who to write for.
Yeah, and I agree. I just think that part of his brilliance and the reason that he survived to this day is because, one, he survived his own day by writing to the masses, and two, he had actual depth. I can't say that word.
Me neither. Depth.
Yeah. In his works, his characters were fleshed out, had real emotions, that kind of stuff. That is important.
Yes, but writing to market does not mean writing stupidly. I think that there's this misconception that if you're going to write to market, you're writing stupid stories, which is not true.
Not always,
you can have that story. I mean, trust me, within the next 5 years, writing to market is going to mean writing a pandemic story. That's That's already started. But
yeah.
the stories of that of those that are going to be the story of those that are going to survive are the ones that will have depth to them as well as being to market. I mean, Dickens wrote serialized story for newspapers. You don't get much more market than that. Like, he added words because he was being paid by the words. Like, taking 3 pages to describe a room is not proper writing.
And how about Anthony Trollope? I mean, that guy, man, he required so many words every 15 minutes, and a very strong formula for every book.
Yeah. But and again, there's nothing wrong with that for the people who can manage it. I would love to come up with a quote unquote universal outline for myself, where I can take this and swap characters around, swap the events, but always have the same, because then I would know what I'm writing each time.
Like
but my
Victoria
mind
Woolf.
doesn't work that way.
So, what's the K?
I said like Victoria Holt. She's a writer I used to read a lot of when I was young, and it's basically poor girl in the 1700s meets rich guy every time and almost dies, and then he comes and rescues her.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's many formulas out there, like romance formula. I used to use a romance formula for my 9 novels that I wrote in like 5 months because they're all the same thing.
And I've noticed for myself that I kind of just naturally end up using formulas when even if I don't plan it, the stories
Well, but that's cool.
fall into a certain
It's easier.
vein.
What works for you, you have to use what works for you. And for us, for the writer, a lot of the time it's figuring out what will work. Once you figured it out, you stick with it. Like, one of the things that works for me is having a co-scripter to help me build my outlines. I can discuss a story with him, and a week later I have a few chapters worth of outline for an upcoming story. And my writing has sped up a lot because I no longer have to sit for 2 hours figure out what I'm going to do with the damn story.
I wanted to add one thing about this topic, maybe to wrap up because it's getting too big. I think like almost 40 minutes. If you can't write to market, what can you do? I thought about this a lot in the past year because you guys know, maybe the guys from YouTube don't know, but I love marketing. I would stay only in the marketing side if I could. If I got Kinder to write for me. Yeah. So what can you do instead of writing to market and still be successful? You have to build a following that will like you. Like the YouTubers do. The famous YouTubers, they write very bad books. Most of them say, I didn't write that. I asked someone to write it for me, but buy it, please. And they are bestsellers because people buy it because it has their names there. People will buy anything from Isadora if they love Isadora. You can write science fiction, romance, aliens, and werewolves, and you don't have a genre, you don't have nothing, but people will buy. So that's another way. If you don't want to write to market and you still want to sell millions, you have to build a following for you. Yourself, your name.
You have to decide what you will market. You can either market yourself as a person or your books. If you can't do neither, you're in trouble, which is where I am, because I cannot market myself nor my books.
You are super huggable.
I don't know how well that markets as a online thing, because it's kind of tough to hug outlines. Online stuff. But this is the thing. Like if a difficulty for a writer is marketing their book, if they can market themselves, then they become the appeal. You know,
Exactly.
people will buy, like you said, people will buy the book because you wrote it. You know, ultimately, that's what I want because I think that it is the better way to go. Because if you're marketing yourself, whatever happens to the market becomes irrelevant because you are always there. You know,
Exactly.
like I was saying, over the next 5 years, I figure the market is going to be pandemics. But 5 years to 10 years, that's going to tank. That's going to end. So what will those writers do at that point? They're going to have to refigure out the market. You know, this is always changing. If you market yourself, well, then you can tip your toe into pandemic stories or not, because it's you that people buy the books to see. They want to see how you write that story, what you did with it. And
Exactly.
I would like to add something here.
Yep.
And that's because I love rhetoric. So what I'm seeing here is we are talking as authors, saying like we want people to buy our books. But, and this is going to be a little bit geeky now, but Aristotle said there are 3 virtues that you have to have in ethos. And one of them is you have to have the goodwill of others in mind. So what we are saying here is, yes, the words we're using are saying that we want to sell our books. But I think the deeper meaning is that we also want good books for the readers out there.
well,
I know there are
Yes.
readers out there who was like, well, the market, quote unquote, is like, I don't want to read Twilight anymore. Like, it's enough. I want deeper things, or I want more niche things. And that is what I think this author group can offer. Because Kendra, you are extremely niche, but there are readers out there who will love your stuff. You just gotta somehow find them, or they
Well-
have to somehow find you. And
I have readers. Like I have one fan who will read literally anything I write. Like I might test it at one point and just write a grocery list and send it to him just to see what he's got to say about it. But the situation I'm in is I don't have enough of those to survive on.
yeah,
So it's one of the reasons why I'm broadening my niche a little bit by playing with gamelit. One, I love it. Like I love gamelit. I think
Perfect.
that if you do not love a genre, do not try to write it. You're going to make your life miserable.
The readers
Like
will know.
romance.
okay.
Sorry, Alan?
Oh, I just said, and the readers will notice that you don't like it.
Oh, yeah.
Will they though?
Isadora commented romance, and I can't help but comment on that now because she was writing so much romance, and in the end, she actually got me on the romance train, even though I hated romance. I literally promised myself I would never do it. And now I'm writing the sequel to a 3-part story with romance,
Yeah.
and I'm loving the story, even though I
Well,
don't
That's
particularly
so
love
bad.
the
I
genre.
love it.
Yeah, well, you fell in love with the story. You ended up, either on purpose or by accident, managing to take that romance and making something that you enjoy out of it. While Isadora started loving the idea and did it so much and forced herself to do it so much that I'm not sure she can even look at romance anymore.
They haven't been edited yet. I wrote 9 books and they're all sitting there. I can't look at them.
Well, yeah, this is where making sure you love what you do is going to be a lot more helpful than writing 20,000 novels you can't stand, because then you
Yeah.
have to deal with those 20,000 novels.
Yeah.
One line that to me always baffles me is the writer who can't stand reading his own story. You'll see this everywhere. Oh, I've worked so much on this story, I can't stand reading it. I reread my stories on a regular basis. I love the stuff I write. I'm the audience. I write for myself to start with, so I write stuff that I love to write, and it's a problem. Every so often, I'll go, I need a piece of information that I know is in this story, and 6 hours later, I'm still reading the damn story, and I forgot what I was looking for. But if you can start from there, now you have to accept that if you start from a narrower band, I'm writing for myself, I'm writing niche, you will not achieve success at the same rate as the person who writes to market. I think this is the big problem. I don't like the word, but this is what's happening, in the indie market right now, is everybody thinks, okay? Everybody, I'm putting in quote, I'm doing generalization, and I hate when people do that, is that there's this mindset that all you have to do is put out a couple of books, or 20 according to a specific website, and you will be successful. Yeah, that's not true. Some people can do that. If you can play by those rules, you can do it too. If you can't, there's a cost, and even playing by those rules, there's a cost. That's what happened to you, Isadora. You tried that 20 book thing, and the cost became your enjoyment. You could no longer enjoy writing it because it was 20 books that weren't necessarily what you wanted to write.
Well, human and mental health. You did kind of break down on that one.
So guys, be smarter than me. I make mistakes, so you don't have to do the same. Write in a genre that you like and also that you can sell. If you don't want to write to market, create a YouTube channel and write to market yourself. Peace.
Be honest as a writer about what your goals are and what the cost to achieve those goals will be. The misconception of 20 books, the misconception of the miserable writer. There's in the art scene, there's probably more misconception than there are artists. And we have to wade through that, and we have to find our personal truth in relation to writing, and you have to accept them. If you want to be the next J.K. Rowling, well, you have to produce a lot of books, that the market wants to read. If you can't do that, wanting to be J.K. Rowling may not be realistic. To me, it's my personal pet peeve in the art scene. I want that, but I don't want to pay the price for it.
Yeah.
I think you also have to figure out where your personal limits are, or where you set the line. I would personally never want to compromise quality for quantity. Not that I'm saying that other people do that regularly, but that is something that I struggle with. I will edit one book 7 times because I'm such a perfectionist. And it's all personal.
And there's a cost to that.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to be willing to accept that cost. It'll take longer to get a book to market that way. And that is not a wrong thing. This is, people will say, well, you have to put out a book every month. Well, no, you don't have to. It's a method that works for that person. You have to do it the way that will work for you. I do 2 drafts. That's the extent of it.
You have to find the way that works for you, and you have to also, to a level, accept that way. You can't say, I will only do 2 drafts, and then you can't have both things. Like I can't do 7 drafts of every book and at the same time expect myself to publish a book every month or every year.
Yeah.
You have to realize what your limits are within your goals in a way.
Absolutely.
Quick question. I mean, I've got about 10 minutes left. I don't know what you guys are going to do. But what got each of you into writing?
Boredom. I was bored one summer and I thought, hey, I could write a book because I literally had nothing better to do. And that just kind of stuck.
Oh, I know what got me. I used it to read books and I used it to want to change the stories, but I couldn't accept that I couldn't change that story. Like I was like, no, I hate this. Why? And then I thought the only way is by making my own books, and then I started.
That's awesome. Me, I don't know.
Just an example, I couldn't accept that J.K. Rowling wouldn't let dogs be in Hogwarts. I like a dog. I had a dog. I was like, I'm not gonna leave my dog here. And then, go, Alan. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I don't know. Like I said, when I was a little kid, I was trying to, for example, like I watched the movie Poltergeist when I was like 7 years old.
Wow.
I loved it. I mean, it scared the crap out of me, but I loved it too. And I sat down with a little notepad and I kept trying to rewrite the scenes that I watched. I'd read them to my mom. And there's just always been a part of me that is attracted to stories and wanted to write them. I guess part of it too, I was around a lot of sisters and they were always annoyed by me. And so, from us, you're annoying. And so I would go into stories to kind of entertain myself when they wanted me to leave. So maybe it was partly that too. I don't know. But it's always come back to me. I was in a band for a period in high school, but I was telling stories when I wrote lyrics for the band too, you know? So
Yeah.
different creative outlets, but storytelling was always at least some part of whatever that creative outlet was.
That's so cool.
Um,
And you, Kinder, you asked
Yeah.
it.
yeah. I've always made up stories. I've always had it. Even before I knew how to read, I was making up stories. I had imaginary friends that more than I would know what to do with. Writing became a way to share those stories with other people. Primarily my parents. My father's always been very supportive of my writing. And then I discovered the internet, and no, sorry, let me rephrase that. Then the internet happened. I am that old. I predate the internet. And then when I got online, I found places where I could hang out and people would enjoy reading my stories, and that's when I started seriously posting stories online. And God, I'm not calling that serious writing because it was still just writing for the fun of it. But I would post them, I would share them with people, and it was about sharing them with somebody else. Instead of having all those 20,000 stories in my head, well, I could reduce the number by one and put it in other people's head.